Alright guys, so Void Erosion Purge has been out for a little while and the meta's starting to settle. We're starting to be able to evaluate guns and determine which ones actually have promise. So I wanted to put together a quick guide on what the best guns are to use in Void Erosion Purge, and I want to give you a little bit of information about these guns. Just because the gun is strong doesn't mean it's actually good in every situation, and I want to make sure to walk you through not only what guns you should be using, but what situations they're actually made for. So having said that, let's hop into the video. Now, before we get started, I do want to mention that these guns are mainly for the top end of Void Erosion Purge. Just because a gun is good in stage 30 does not mean it's going to be good in stage 29 or 28. So all of this is assuming that you are trying to farm stage 30. If you're not, these guns will still work, but you will have to make some serious alterations in order to ensure they are the correct element type for the stage you're on. While it's entirely possible to brute force Void Erosion Purge, it's something that I will discourage most players from doing, especially if you're trying to clear these in pub matches. Because while you might have enough damage, the rest of your teammates will not, and if you are trying to brute force it, you are not putting out enough additional damage to make up for your teammates' lack of damage. And because of that, you're just going to have a bad time. Alright guys, so it's Randy jumping in here. Now, I told Judge to not actually put rolls in this video because I didn't want people to think that these were God rolls, and I didn't want him to like catch a lot of flack for maybe not giving people the best roll. But he did want to put something in here just to help people who are new to the game or who might be struggling to come up with a roll. So that's why they're actually in here. So these may not be the most meta rolls, but they are the rolls that he is using. Now, the first Descendant evolves really fast, so even when you look at these rolls, even if they are meta, there's a really good chance that that could be completely different tomorrow, because that's just how fast people are figuring out what the actual meta is. Also, make sure you look at any of the notes that I put on the screen. Some of the cores might not actually be the best core for the gun, but the big issue is Judge is having a hell of a time getting cores, and getting the cores to roll the way he wants. And if you've been playing the game at all, you can really sympathize with this. So just keep all that in mind when you're looking at the information that Judge decided to provide on the screen, because he wanted to do this, even if it might not have been the best venue to do it. All right, back to the video. And with that out of the way, the first gun I want to look at is Voltia. Now, I'm putting Voltia at number 5 on my list. I don't think that this gun is something that you're going to be using a lot in Void Erosion Purge, but it is a very clutch gun to have in your arsenal in Void Erosion Purge. The main reason we're going to actually have this gun on us is just to break elemental shields in stage 30 and in any other stage that you find it applicable. There are spots where you can use this to help debuff and debuff a lot of adds all at once, but this isn't really the best weapon to do that with. So while you can do a lot with this gun, I would relegate it to your 3rd slot and only use it to really break shields, but I would say it is worth having on your character. So up next, I would say Clairvoyance is another great gun to have, and this is actually the debuff stick you want. This is the debuff stick that everybody in the top matches is using. The whole goal of this weapon is to enable other people to do DPS. And because of that, this is a weapon that I would actually put on your Lepic. While your Lepic is gathering enemies, they can work on getting a debuff on them, so all of your DPS can really burn them out much faster. This gun really only excels if you have a solid party, because if you do not have a Lepic to gather, you're going to spend a lot of time shooting all over. So while I suggest you have this gun, I would really pay attention to your party's makeup. The other thing to keep in mind with this is you're not really stacking it out for damage. The main thing you want to do with this weapon is keep it with as much uptime as possible, and because of that, you're really going to want to work on slowing down the fire rate and getting as big of a magazine on it as possible. On top of that, there's actually a debate going on in the community right now. We are trying to figure out if rifle charge gain speed is actually worth having on your weapon, or if you should do other things with this slot. Right now, a lot of the community is assuming that this is actually not as good of a buff as people think it is, and that you would be better off just adding additional utility to these slots. But at the end of the day, just keep in mind that your goal with this weapon is to debuff and to move around the map quickly. The next gun I want to talk about is actually 2 different guns. I want to talk about the guns that you should be bringing in to do AoE damage. There are actually 3 weapons in this category, but I am separating this category out a little bit. First on my list is the Albion Cavalry gun. This gun is an absolute menace if you pair it with Haley. Now I know Haley is not the top tier DPS for this content right now, but she is a very solid contender, and she does make your life in pubs a lot easier because generally you do not have the right mix of teammates when you're playing in pubs. And being able to bring this gun in with Haley will help with some of the CC issues that you're going to find that you have because that you do not have the right team comp. On the topic of ad clearing guns, you could not go forward without talking about Restored Relic as well. Restored Relic does a great job of clearing ads. This is basically the Albion Cavalry gun to Glay. This gun works exceptionally well on Glay, but it does have a lot of downsides. This is not the gun you want to be using if there is a Lepic in your team and they are doing any type of gathering. The problem with Albion Cavalry's gun is the way the missiles work. The way the missiles shoot out and indiscriminately target anything on the screen can cause problems with Lepic's Big Suck. And with Lepic's Big Suck already having issues with the RNG on what to suck, having things frozen in place before the suck goes off can make things even worse. So because of that, I would really suggest being careful using this gun if you have a Lepic in your party. If you don't have a Lepic in your party, I would suggest using this because it will speed up your ability to clear ads and push through the content. Now, I can't tell you the exact build for Restored Relic because I don't actually have one. Restored Relic, while it's good, has not been a high priority item for me because I do use Haley over Glay when it comes to general pubbing. What I can say is this is a gun that really needs a high fire rate. So your build should focus on high fire rate and chill damage. Outside of that, I would go with probably blast damage and then finish anything up you can with crit hit damage because you're going to be getting crit hit boosts from Enzos if there are Enzos in your party. Moving on, the next set of guns that I want to talk about is the shotguns. The shotguns were the early meta and still perform exceedingly well on everybody but Glay. So because of that, I would highly suggest that you go ahead and really cook out a good Smithereens. Smithereens' unique ability basically puts it at 100% critical hit rate. And when you mix that with the additional shell capacity, which basically shell capacity means more pellets in your round, this gun does a ton of damage. And it is very, very easy to proc its unique ability. Because of that, this was an early favorite in the meta, and it is still a very, very solid gun. And it's a gun that I would suggest you build because you can use this gun on 3 or realistically even 4 of the most meta descendants right now. While it might not be the absolute best for Glay, having it built to use for other people still allows you to have it built and use on Glay while you're making better guns that are specifically tailored for her. So for the build on the shotgun, this is something close to what we're looking at. There are a couple additional mods here you can switch out and it will actually make this a little bit better, and we're going to go ahead and show those now. If you decide to slot these 2 mods in, you should see a pretty substantial increase in your damage. I know it seems a little weird to pull rifling reinforcement off, but with us using this in Void Erosion Purge, the element damage scales more than the base damage. So that's why we're going to suggest going ahead and trying this out for your build. If you find that it feels inconsistent, don't be afraid to just leave rifling reinforcement on. So this is the point in the video where we would typically talk about the Executor. But unfortunately, another gun has come along that has basically eclipsed the need to have this gun. And that is a gun that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on in the list. So next on the list, we're going to look at the Perforator. This gun is an absolute beast for Glay. This gun works exceptionally well, but it works exceptionally well with a specific team comp. If you have an Enzo and a Lepic in your team, this is the gun that I would suggest you use. If you have an Enzo in your team and you do not have a Lepic to gather with, then I would suggest you actually use Restored Relic. So when it comes to the roll on the gun, you're looking for something like this. We're really trying to bring up the chill damage and really trying to get as much crit hit damage as we can. Now, the idea with this gun is that you need an Enzo in the party to buff your crit rate. This will work without an Enzo in the party, but it's not going to be as good. A lot of people are running Drive Shaft with Glay when they use this gun. And the idea there is that when Drive Shaft procs, you get an even higher fire rate. Again, make sure that you are using this with the proper team comp. The AoE damage is doing you no good if you do not have the enemies grouped. And if you don't have the enemies grouped, just use Restored Relic. And last but not least, here it is, the Last Dagger. This is currently the meta king when it comes to Void Erosion Purge, but there are a lot of things that have to be set up in order for you to use this successfully in Void Erosion Purge. First things first, Void Erosion Purge, most of the time you want to run with the ideal team comp, which right now is Alepic and Enzo and 2 Glaze at the highest tier. This is also a single target damage gun, and I see a lot of people using it in the wrong situations. When you are doing general damaging as you run through Void Erosion Purge, you should be using your Perforator because your Perforator does AoE damage and it will burn you through the ads faster to get to the boss. Where this gun sings is when it comes to boss DPS. This is basically the uncontested king of single target damage on Glay right now, and that is what you should be using it for. If you are using this the entire time you run through Void Erosion Purge, unfortunately you are doing something wrong. When it comes to the build, this is basically what we're running. We're really trying to focus on the weak point site here because weak point scales elemental damage after the most recent patch. So we're really trying to scale that elemental damage up as much as possible. We are still taking the crit hit damage as well because this gun will take advantage of Enzo and your ability to crit hit. We are using Overwhelm on this weapon, but the main reason we're using Overwhelm is because we get a damage type bonus in stage 30. This isn't the best mod to use if you do not get that damage type bonus. This is another gun where we want to crank the fire rate, but you do have to be careful because it encroaches upon the damage rate limit. This gun already has a very high base fire rate, and if you stack the fire rate up too high, the game will think that you are cheating and it will make your bullets disappear. So you will notice that we don't actually run 3 fire rate mods on here, and that is the main reason why. This is just to allow the weapon to be more consistent. Now I do want to throw one honorable mention in, and that is for the Secret Garden. This gun is really good as a stat stick for Inez. And while I do not suggest you use Inez at the top tier of Void Erosion Purge, she is actually very good from stages 1 all the way up to about stage 24-25. And because of that, having a good Secret Garden on you will just make your life easier when you use her to push the early stages of Void Erosion Purge. Now this is the build I use, and as you can see, it is not fully catted out, so not all of the mods are fully maxed. But for a stat stick, it still puts in a serious amount of damage. Alright guys, and that's it. Hopefully this helped you kind of get an idea of which guns you need to bring into Void Erosion Purge in the current system and with the current sandbox. Now this could change a little bit as we start to get additional stages past 30, and if that does happen, we'll revisit this list. But for now, these are the guns that I would suggest you take your time to build because they will give you the most bang for your buck. If you guys have enjoyed the content, definitely leave a like and let me know what you thought down in the comments below. If you're looking to hang out, head over to the live channel. You can always catch us live on Twitch and we can always talk about things there. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.